October 29, 1929. A date that would forever be etched in the annals of history, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a period of unprecedented hardship and struggle. A date etched in history. The day when the world stood still, holding its breath, as the financial markets crumbled. The day the music stopped, the vibrant tunes of the Roaring Twenties were abruptly silenced, replaced by an eerie stillness that signaled the end of a golden age. The day the Roaring Twenties roared their last, the streets that once bustled with life and energy now seemed to echo with the ghosts of a bygone era. On this fateful Tuesday, the bottom fell out of the stock market, forever changing the course of history. The ticker tape machines went wild, and traders on the stock exchange floor were thrown into a frenzy of panic and despair. It was a day that lived in infamy, a day that ushered in the darkest economic period in modern times, the Great Depression. Long lines formed outside banks, and newspapers screamed headlines of financial ruin. The crash wasn't just numbers on a ticker tape, it was a catastrophic event that shattered the lives of countless individuals. It was people's lives, their dreams, their hopes, all crumbling before their eyes. Fortunes vanished, businesses shuttered. The once thriving economy was brought to its knees, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The American dream, once so bright and promising, seemed to evaporate into the ether. Families were left destitute, and the future seemed bleak and uncertain. This wasn't just an American tragedy. The impact of the crash was felt far and wide, transcending borders and affecting economies around the world. The shockwaves of the crash reverberated across the globe, plunging the world into a deep and prolonged economic depression. Breadlines formed in cities everywhere, and the international stock markets mirrored the chaos of Wall Street. The 1929 crash was a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy, a lesson that remains relevant even today. It showed us how the actions in one part of the world can have profound and far-reaching consequences, a reality that continues to shape our financial systems and policies. To understand the crash, we must first rewind to the years leading up to it. The 1920s, often romanticized as the Roaring Twenties, were a time of unprecedented economic growth and social change. Jazz music filled the air, flappers danced the Charleston, the American spirit was riding high, but beneath this veneer of prosperity, trouble was brewing. The stock market, fueled by speculation and easy credit, was becoming increasingly detached from economic reality. People were buying stocks on margin, borrowing heavily against the hope of quick profits. This reckless speculation created a bubble, an unsustainable inflation of stock prices. Like a house of cards, it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. And crash it did, with devastating consequences. The first cracks in the facade appeared in early September 1929. Stock prices began to wobble, causing some investors to sell and take their profits. This initial dip triggered a chain reaction, a domino effect that would soon engulf the entire market. As stock prices fell, brokers began making margin calls, demanding that investors who had bought stocks on margin put up more money to cover their losses. But with the market in freefall, many investors couldn't meet these calls. They were forced to sell their stocks at any price, further driving down the market. Fear and panic gripped Wall Street. The once booming stock market had transformed into a scene of chaos and despair. No one knew where the bottom was, and everyone was selling, desperate to salvage what little they could. Thursday, October 24, 1929, a day that would forever be etched in the annals of financial history as Black Thursday. On this day, the stock market experienced its most dramatic decline yet, with over 12 million shares traded in a frenzy of selling. As the ticker tape churned out a relentless stream of declining prices, a sense of disbelief and then sheer panic swept through the nation. Crowds gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange, their faces a mixture of shock, disbelief, and utter despair. Newspapers across the country carried banner headlines about the plummeting market. The crash dominated radio airwaves, spreading fear and uncertainty far and wide. The Roaring Twenties had come to a screeching halt. Section 5, From Wall Street to Main Street. The impact of the crash was swift and devastating. It wasn't just wealthy investors who suffered. The pain rippled through every corner of American society, from Wall Street to Main Street. Banks, heavily invested in the stock market, began to fail. With their life savings wiped out, countless Americans lost everything. Businesses, starved of credit and consumer spending, were forced to close their doors, laying off workers and further deepening the economic crisis. What started as a financial crisis had morphed into a full-blown economic catastrophe, the Great Depression. The American dream had become a nightmare. Section 6, The Dust Bowl, a Nation's Agony. As if the economic devastation wasn't enough, a natural disaster of epic proportions struck the American heartland in the 1930s, the Dust Bowl. Years of severe drought and unsustainable farming practices turned once fertile land into a parched wasteland. Massive dust storms, some spanning miles wide, swept across the Great Plains, burying crops, killing livestock and choking everything in their path. Families, their livelihoods destroyed, packed up their meager belongings and headed west, desperate for a better life. The Dust Bowl became a symbol of the nation's despair, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving power of nature. It was a dark chapter in American history, a time of hardship and resilience that tested the very fabric of society. Section 7. A New Deal, Hope and Recovery. In the face of unprecedented hardship, the American spirit did not break. People helped their neighbors, communities came together. And in 1933, a new president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, offered a ray of hope with his New Deal programs. Roosevelt's New Deal was a series of government programs and reforms aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform to the beleaguered nation. These programs put people back to work, provided financial assistance to the needy, and reformed banking and financial regulations. The New Deal didn't end the Great Depression overnight, but it did provide a lifeline to millions of Americans, restoring a sense of hope and purpose during a time of profound uncertainty and despair. Section 8. Echoes of the Past. Lessons for Today. The 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression that followed were watershed moments in history. These events not only reshaped the financial landscape of the United States, but also had far-reaching consequences across the globe. The ripple effects were felt in every corner of the world, from bustling cities to rural farmlands, altering the course of countless lives and economies. They serve as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy, the dangers of unchecked speculation, and the importance of sound financial regulation. The speculative bubble that led to the crash was fueled by a combination of overconfidence, lack of oversight, and a relentless pursuit of profit. When the bubble burst, it exposed the fragility of an economy built on shaky foundations. The lessons learned from this dark chapter in history remain relevant today, as we navigate an increasingly complex and interconnected world. The images of soup kitchens and unemployment lines are stark reminders of the human cost of economic mismanagement. They underscore the need for policies that prioritize the well-being of all citizens, not just the wealthy few. We must be vigilant in guarding against the excesses that led to the crash of 1929, promoting sustainable economic practices, and ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. This means advocating for transparency, accountability, and fairness in our financial systems. It also means learning from the past to build a more resilient and equitable future. The crash of 1929 was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that prosperity is not guaranteed, and that even the most robust economies are vulnerable to shocks and imbalances. It taught us that vigilance, regulation, and a commitment to the common good are essential to maintaining economic stability. As we move forward, let us remember these lessons and strive to create a world where economic security is a reality for all. Section 9. Never forget, the enduring legacy. The 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression that followed left an indelible mark on American society, shaping government policies, financial regulations, and the lives of millions of people. The crash was not just a financial disaster, it was a human tragedy that affected every aspect of life. Families were torn apart, dreams were shattered, and the very fabric of society was tested. It was a period of immense suffering, but also one of resilience, innovation, and social change. Communities came together to support one another, and new ideas emerged to address the challenges of the time. The New Deal, introduced by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, was a series of programs and projects aimed at reviving the economy and providing relief to those in need. The crash forced a reassessment of economic priorities, leading to the creation of social safety nets like Social Security and unemployment insurance, which were designed to protect the most vulnerable members of society. These programs were revolutionary at the time and have since become cornerstones of American social policy. Programs that continue to provide a safety net for millions of Americans today. The legacy of the Great Depression is still felt as these programs have been expanded and adapted to meet the needs of a changing society. They serve as a reminder of the importance of government intervention in times of crisis. As we move further away from the events of 1929, it's crucial to remember the lessons learned during that tumultuous time. The stock market crash and the Great Depression taught us about the dangers of unregulated markets and the need for a robust social safety net. It's more important than ever to remember the lessons of the past. Educating future generations about this period is essential to prevent history from repeating itself. Schools, museums, and historical reenactments play a vital role in keeping the memory of the Great Depression alive. We must honor the memories of those who suffered during this dark chapter in history by acknowledging their struggles and sacrifices. Commemorative events and memorials serve as poignant reminders of the resilience and strength of the human spirit, by striving to create a more just, equitable, and sustainable world for all. The enduring legacy of the Great Depression is a call to action for each of us to contribute to a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.